1998 Toyota Rav4 3SFV engine, oil pan, remove and replace. Alright, before you start this job, you need to take off this little plastic that's under there and this part of the exhaust. I'll show you how to do that in a second, but if you're going to remove your oil pan because you think you have a pan gasket leak, be careful because there's a certain leak on here that fools a lot of people, so I'm going to show you that right now. If you're watching this video because you want to do a pan gasket reseal, because you think that you have a leaking pan gasket, and this is what you see, all this oil here, back down here, oil, all the oil down all the way there. This is actually not a pan gasket leak. This fools a lot of people. This is a gasket leak from the front casing on the oil pump, which is behind the timing case cover. Here's the timing case cover, the lower timing case cover. And you can see that this is a lot of oil here. This oil is leaking out of the timing case cover because if we pop that timing case cover off, we'll see the crankshaft in there. And then we'll see the sprocket. The timing belt drives the sprocket for the oil pump, and the oil pump is in two pieces. The main piece, the suction apparatus, is inside the tank, and then the drive apparatus is inside behind this timing case cover, driven by the belt. There's a gasket. It's kind of shaped like an animal cookie. And that gasket's super thin, and it just gets brittle and it breaks. And then you get an oil leak from the oil pump into the timing belt cover, and then it drips out, and it ends up really looking a lot like an oil pan gasket leak, but it isn't. I'm mentioning this because if you're watching this video thinking that you're going to fix this leak by changing this gasket, by resealing the oil pan, it's not going to work. The fix for this leak is to pull the timing cover off, pull the timing belt out, get in there, pull that pump off, replace the gasket. Basically, if you're going to do that, might as well do the whole timing belt job, do the water pump, do the shaft seals, do everything, do the timing belt, and then you'll be good to go for a very long time. Don't take your oil pan off and reseal it if you're trying to fix this, because you're going to be back to square one. If you really do need to take your oil pan off because let's say you really do know it's leaking, let's say you got leaks coming out from here, or the reason I'm replacing this is because somebody stripped this, put the wrong size plug in, or I don't know what they did, but they did something wrong. So I can't get this drain plug out, so I got to take the whole pan off and replace it. Then you can continue watching this video. There'll be a little edit because I took this exhaust off before I decided to do a video. After you get your little plastic cover thing off here, you're going to decide where you want to break open the exhaust. If you have a 48 state setup, this is what you're going to see. There'll be this intermediate pipe. If you don't have a 48 state setup, you'll have a Cali setup, and that's going to have a three-way catalytic converter up here. It's not going to have this pipe. It's a completely different exhaust manifold that goes into a three-way cat. You can only break the California exhaust open up in the front here where you have the spring bolt connection. But if you want to, on the 48, you can break it off up there on those bolts. There's one there. There's one on this side. You're going to need a new gasket for that. I broke it off down here, and I actually ended up having to reuse my gasket. Hopefully it works out. I don't have an exhaust leak. We'll see. I'll update the video. Wherever you decide to break it off, whether it's up there or up here, get these cracked. Just get these started, and then don't pull them out all the way. Then you'll go back onto the other end of the pipe and get that side disconnected first before this, because you want this in place so it constrains the pipe, because that one down there is way tighter. These are going to be tight, and that one down there is super tight. Hit it with some PB Blaster from the top. And if you do break it up here, make sure you disconnect this oxygen sensor. That's the plug right there. Unplug that and then just bring the whole thing out. Just be careful as you're bringing it down. All right, now we're gonna scoot down under there, and I'll show you where to break the other end free. Okay, here's the other end of that pipe. It's the only other connection if you just follow it down. You have this here. I'm looking towards the front of the vehicle. You can see here's the right side tire. this bolt here and that bolt up there, they're pretty darn tight and you don't have a ton of room down here. It's worth lifting the vehicle up at least a little bit. When I did this job, I did have the vehicle on jack stands to give me some more access, especially for tools, because I had to use a breaker bar on these. So break these open, and then once you have that open, there'll be a gasket. That gasket's either going to be on this side of the section when you pull it out, or it might be stuck up here. Just make sure you pull it out, because you cannot reuse that gasket. And then this pipe, it doesn't look like it will fit through here, but it will. Pull it out through the front, just kind of turn it, and it'll come out. Okay, so once you have the exhaust off, you want to go back up here and you want to clean this off. This gasket is a form-in-place gasket, just meaning that it's a liquid that you push on, you put it on and you push it in place. So this here is evidence on this particular car that somebody was messing with this, probably resealed this pan thinking they'd stop this leak, and again, that doesn't work, because that's not where this leak is from. Somebody really screwed up the flange on this pan. I'll show you how to remove this properly so that you don't screw up any flange. Do not pry the flange. Next step that we're going to do is we're going to remove this stiffener, and there's a note in the manual here that says that there's 2 bolts for the manual transmission and 3 bolts on the automatic. 1, 2, 3. These are 14 millimeter, and on the manual transmission there's only going to be 2. Here's the stiffener plate for this automatic transmission setup. These bolts are not the same. These 2 are the same. They're flange bolts. This one is different. It's shorter and it has a washer. There are 17 bolts and 2 nuts. See how that's a nut on these studs? And so when we go to loosen this, we're going to loosen them a little bit in a random sort of pattern going across, just to make sure that we don't accidentally bend any of them. That one there, and the other one back here are going to be the hardest to get to. If you haven't been able to drain your oil because your drain plug is stuck in there, then what you might want to do is stack some pieces of wood here, or go around this with some rope or some wire or something, so once you loosen these, this doesn't dump, and dump 4 quarts of oil on you. Just make a template like this, and then put each one of your bolts in so that you put them back exactly where they were. Okay, that one in the corner back there is the hardest to get to. I think you'd probably be able to get on it with the regular combination wrench, but if you have this set up, you could get right on it. And I would start with that one. They're not very tight at all, so just loosen one and then go around, just kind of keep it a somewhat random pattern. So here's my setup to reach that one, from Harbor Freight. These are like $8 or $9 or whatever, and then this is just a regular deep socket. So that reached in there real well, just about like that, maybe about like that, and I was able to turn it. If you're having trouble reaching that, here's your solution. Okay, I have all of the fasteners out, and as you can see, the pan is still held in place. So at this point, we're gonna dislodge this by hitting it with a plastic tipped hammer. You can get these at Harbor Freight for like $3. We're just gonna very gently, don't stick anything in between the flange and the lower piece of the block, and pry it, because it's very likely that you'll damage the flange on the pan, and then you're in a lot of trouble if you're reusing the pan. But what's worse is you might damage that mating surface on the block. So you have these 2 studs, the one here and the one on the other side here. So you're just going to tap this with the plastic hammer, and you'll notice that it will slowly kind of dislodge that gasket maker material. Just make sure you have every single piece off. Should have 19 total. Just got my little plastic tipped hammer. Okay, at this point I can feel that it's a bit loose, and I can just pop it right off. So I I don't have a whole lot of oil in here, but I have some. I'm just gonna bring this down. You have to kind of turn it a little bit to get it out from that. Where the pickup is for the oil. And here you have it. And I'm gonna be dripping oil when you get it. So hopefully you were able to see that. That takes a couple of minutes of just soft knocking around, but it's a much better method than prying because you can really easily mess up this mating surface. I'm going to take off this old gasket material, get this cleaned up real nice. See, we have some here. There's your oil dipstick right there. Our studs are still in place, that's good. I'm gonna clean those studs up. Just get all of these surfaces really spick and span. This pan, I'm not gonna be able to reuse because the drain plug issue. But if you are reusing your pan and you're just going to resell it, you need to make sure you clean this flange up really, really well. Don't scrape it and make scratches. You can use a plastic razor blade or even a regular razor blade if you're careful. And then you want to clean that up with like a brake cleaner, some type of non-residue cleaner, so that when you put your RTV on, you don't have anything interfering with the stickiness of the RTV. Carb cleaner has lubricant in it, so don't use carb cleaner, use brake cleaner. You really, really want to make sure you get it nice and clean. That saves you the trouble of having to do it again. I'm going to now compare my old pan with my new replacement pan, and everything looks really good. You can see we have the same holes in the stamped portion up here. This hole here, that's for the dipstick. This here, I don't know what that's for. That's for the pump there. And this over here, and we have all of that same layout here. And also the whole configuration I already checked. This is the model number TOP04 Alpha. Made in Canada. I was really happy to see that. This is Spectra Premium. I got this on Amazon for $52 delivered. It's very important that you clean each and every one of these bolts up before reinstalling. See how this bolt has this stuff on the end, and it almost looks like it's threaded all the way to the end? That's not the case. This stuff that looks like threading all the way to the end, it's just form in place that's been stuck in there, and this soft tip is form in place gasket maker. If you put them back in when they're in this state and they have all this gasket maker on them, you're going to end up breaking them, and the reason is because you're going to over torque these, and that's going to be a big headache because then you're going to have to try to extract these broken bolts, and just don't want to deal with that. So just get them real cleaned up. That's what they should look like when they're all nice and clean. No gasket material on there, no oil, nothing. Takes quite a while to clean them up, but it's totally worth doing. And then what you also want to do is you want to take this little nut and you want to thread each one of these through this nut to make sure that you didn't leave any gasket material in the threads. Again, if you don't take these measures, it's very easy to break these bolts. Alright, I have my surfaces cleaned up now. All along here, I just used a razor blade and just carefully went around and took off the extra gasket material. This is the area that's the hardest to reach. Back there. And then I went over it with a shop towel that I sprayed some brake cleaner on, and so it's in good shape. It's not slick feeling. If you get any kind of slickness, then you're going to want to clean that off. So now we're going to get ready to go ahead and put the pan on. Everything needs to be totally ready, good to go before you put your RTV on the pan, because you have to seal it within 5 minutes. Alright, so next, take the pan and do a little dry run. Put the pan in place without putting any of the gasket maker material on it, just so you know where your clearances are. Because if you don't, you're going to have the gasket material on here, and if you go to try to put it in and you start rubbing up against things, you're going to make a mess and you're going to have to start over. Get an idea about what you need to tie back and exactly where you need to have your hands and whatnot. In doing my little dry run without any of the gasket maker on there, I noticed that this transmission cable is in my way. This is an automatic. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this. So here I just undid this one 10mm bolt there, and then you can just pull the cable back, and then I just put some wire around it. That frees up one of my hands and gets this out of my way, because as you're putting it up you need to keep in mind these studs. So you got that one stud there, and then the other stud. You can see the hardest part of getting the pan in place when you have the gasket maker on and not making a mess is getting back here. Here we can see a picture. It's got these cross sections. All this is saying for A is to keep it in the center on those little grooves. So that is corresponding to these little grooves. And then for B, that section is staying on the inside. See, here's the wall. So you're going to come on the inside of those holes. And then C is for this section here, you're going to come on the outside of that flange over there. So that just means that the application goes like this, and then around the inside, and then like this, and around the inside, all the way around until you get to this last flange part here, or this part of the flange I should say. And then you kind of tuck out, and then you go along the edge there, come back to this hole, come in and around, and you just do that all the way around. And you want to be about 5mm from the edge on C, this part here. You also want to have your bead at about 3 to 5mm. And in case you're wondering, this is how you control the bead size. You cut it to however thick you need it, right? So this is between 3 and 5mm. You can use this Toyota seal packing. That stuff's expensive, and you only can get it at the Toyota dealer, so I always use Ultra Black. I've used this on many applications, never failed me. It was great stuff. But you have to do it by the instructions. So the instructions say, let dry for 1 hour, then tighten to torque spec. So you're just going to finger tighten at first. So just put a socket in your hand and tighten up those bolts, just finger tight. Then you're going to allow 24 hours to fully cure before filling with fluids or returning to service. If you don't have 24 hours, then either use Permatex Right Stuff, which is more expensive, or use this Toyota seal packing. This is made obviously for Toyota dealers, so they don't have 24 hours to be waiting for the gasket maker to cure all the way. So this stuff cures a lot faster. You have to make sure, if you do use that, everything is back together in 5 minutes. So you have to work quickly with either Right Stuff or with the Toyota packing. Got a little bit more leeway with Ultra Black, but then in turn you have to wait for it to cure for a longer period of time. So here I have the gasket maker in place. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on. Okay, so I have the fan up. Just a couple quick notes. You're going to want to have these nuts on hand first, because they're the easiest to put in, because you already got the stud sticking through. So get that nut, and then the one on the other side, and then get your corners in here, back here, here, and one of these up here. And then at that point, slowly start putting in the rest. And again, if you're using the Permatex Ultra Black, you're only doing them hand tight. Just put a socket in your hand and turn them on. I found it was easier for most of these to just put them on an extension and just turn it. Obviously the hardest one to reach is this one. It's back here. Can't get the camera in there, but it's back there. And so for that one, to reach that, what I did was I turned my hand upside down like this and went in like that, and you can just get it. This one here is really not too bad. This one's the trickiest one. Right here, you can't see it. Once you have it in place, my deep socket, where did it go? Once you have it in place, I was able to get the deep socket and spin it by hand. Also, when you're looking at the holes, if there's all kinds of RTV that went into your hole, take it out. Many of these holes go through, like this one. Let's see, does that one? That one doesn't. But some of these go through. If there's a lot of RTV on it, just take as much out as you can, and then put it in maybe halfway, and then pull it out, and then clean off the bolt, and then put it back in. Just again, just hand tight. I gotta leave it like this for an hour. and then come back and tack down each one of these. 48 inch-pound low torque, you're gonna go like here, there, here, here, etc. Don't go all the way in a row, and don't torque them down to 48 at first. Go maybe halfway, so maybe set your torque wrench for maybe 24, and then step up from there. All right, I got all the nuts and bolts back in, and I was able to get the torque wrench on all but one. And this is the setup that I was able to use to reach all of them. I just got this 6-inch extension with this 1/4-inch drive socket. I had to use this setup with the flex head to get that one, actually about like that. I don't know how you're going to get that bolt if you don't have a flex head, because it's so tight on the flange you can't hardly even get a combination wrench in there. And then I didn't have quite the right length for clearance on some of those towards the back to give myself a little extra length on a couple of them. With the torque wrench, I was just using this like a little, 2-inch extension. So that was the little setup. That was the setup that I used to reach this one here, because you can't get the full extension in, and this one here. Also the one that's back here, the hard to reach one. Then this one that you can see, this is actually the most difficult one to I can't get my torque wrench on there. So the only way I was actually able to get any tool on at all was with this flex head. Just get it on there, and you see you don't have a whole lot of space back here to turn this, but it can be done. The rest of them I was able to get with the 6-inch extension. And so it's all set, secure for 24 hours before I refill it with oil. I'm going to go ahead and put this back so I don't forget the transmission cable. Next we're going to put that stiffener bracket back on. So that was just those 3 bolts. Torque for the stiffener bracket is 27 foot-pounds. Okay, time to put this exhaust back on. Here are the 2 gaskets that I'm going to be using. This is the original, and this is the original. This is the one over towards the rear of the car. And this is the one right up under that, that little short piece. Couldn't find a part number on this from Toyota. Again, that's the gasket, but I just can't find a part number for that. So I went through one of the exhaust companies. Best part number that I could find, 31614. It's actually a slightly different height than this one. So, and it's a different material, as you can see. I'm not sure this is going to work. Supposedly from the exhaust company, this is a good fit. And then this is also a slightly different design on that rear gasket, but this is a known good fit. 31332. And I got both of these at Napa. If you end up taking it apart up here, this is going to be a different gasket. I'll put that part number on there as well. This is the old gasket, which you either had to pry off of here or on the corresponding surface on the other side of the exhaust, which will still be on the car. And that's the design on this. You can see it's one of these crush gaskets. It's a metal gasket. It's got like a little accordion joint, and it crushes. A little bit different, but it's a suitable replacement. And then on this end, again, this is going to depend on where you broke the exhaust. On this federal emissions, so not California emissions, I decided to take it out here, which is where the spring bolts are. I think I'm going to reuse my gasket. It looks like I could probably get away with it. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I just don't know about this one. I don't know about the material being so much softer, the height. I don't know. So I prefer to reuse this one. I have reused exhaust gaskets before, but only after really short use time. You know, like if you put one on and you got a little problem, you have to pop it off real quick and put the same new one back on, fairly new one. So I'm hoping I can get away with that. I put a tiny little bit of anti-seize, just a very little bit, because they were real rusty on the bottom. Clean them up with the wire brush, and those are the 2 bolts that are going on this end. This is the end that's towards the rear of the vehicle. I got the gasket on here. This is that old gasket. I'm going to try to get away with reusing it. And so you just got to take the end of the exhaust pipe here and just kind of wiggle it around not a whole lot of space, but that's the transfer case. So if you're two-wheel drive, you're not going to see that part. But just get it around there, and then all I'm going to do is kind of get it up here like that, and then just put the spring bolts in there, but not tighten them all the way, just so they're able to hold the exhaust. And then I'm going to go back under here and get that surface mated first. Okay, we're back under here. Make sure that both of these surfaces, the surface on the pipe that you take out, and the surface on this side that you take out, make sure they're clean. And then I'll just slide this gasket in here, and then I'll line these up, and then these are going in. These two bolts are going in at 36 foot-pounds. When you're tacking these down, move back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You know, before you put your torque wrench on, just using a regular wrench until these surfaces get real close together and you feel it starting to tighten up. Don't tighten down one side all the way and then go to the other side, because you'll mess up the shape of the gasket. So this is done. I'm now going to move up to the front and tack those down. Same deal up here. You're going to go back and forth and back and forth, and keep an eye on your gap here to make sure that it's sealing evenly. And you're taking these all the way down to 45 foot-pounds. You're going to hear this making a lot of noise. It's going to make all kinds of crazy noises as you're compressing this spring. Just don't let it distract you from the noise of your torque wrench. If you have a click-style torque wrench, just drive them in. Takes a little while. Alright, so I have these tacked down at 45 foot-pounds. If you decided to break it up there, I'll go and give you the torque value for those nuts, and also what the California spec is. Run your fingers around this edge and make sure that it's the same all the way around. Okay, according to the manual, it's 45 for any of these bolts. So whether you're Cali, this is your California, whether it's Cali or you're taking out the top bolts on the 48 state, is 45. Okay, next you're going to refill with oil. Don't forget that. All that work for nothing if you don't. There's your engine oil dipstick, there's your oil filter. Good time to go ahead and change your oil filter. Okay, drain and fill with the oil filter change is 4.1 liters. Right now I've got it at about, I think I put 4.2 liters in. The manual says a dry fill is 4.8 liters. Drain and refill is 4.1 liters. So I'm probably going to have to add a little bit, but I'm going to wait until after I start the engine and make sure I don't have any leaks, and then I will top it off using the dipstick. Alright, so everything's back together. Took her for a test drive and she's driving fine. No leaks from the oil pan. What I mentioned in the beginning of the video about this oil leak over here that fools people sometimes, you can see there where that oil leak is coming from. I had that all cleaned up before I started the engine. You can see that may make you think that you have an oil pan leak, but you don't. If you do have this leak, it's the gasket for the front part of the oil pump behind the timing case cover. Make sure you clean it up really well, because then when you go to test to make sure you don't have any leaks from this pan gasket, if you don't have this clean, you're not going to be able to see that little trace right there. And that's going to be your clue that it is from there, because you might mistake that for a pan gasket leak and take the pan off again even though it's not leaking. You can put this piece back on, this plastic piece, and that'll be it.